We got to talk about what's next because the injury bug is going to bite Christian. But first, we see Jericho. He gets revenge against Christian and Trish in a handicap match, and then he gets a win against Jericho in a steel cage. But this is when we see Christian get hurt with a back injury. He winds up being on the shelf for like 4 months. And for whatever reason, when he comes back, he and Tomko just don't really get back on track.
Right.
We see Christian lose to Jericho again in a ladder match. They fail to win the tag team titles. And then Christian's a part of the very first ever Money in the Bank match in WrestleMania history, but he doesn't win that. And it feels like maybe the writing is on the wall. I know that you sort of transitioned to the end of your talent relations run in June of 2004. Now that you're no longer running talent relations, are you still in any sort of regular communication with Christian? Does your relationship change once you're out of that role?
It changed a little bit, but I still saw him on a regular basis at all the TVs. Because even though Laurinaitis was in charge of talent relations, for God's sakes, uh, I still made the TVs because I was doing commentary. So I'd see him at TVs, and we've always had a good relationship. We understand each other. He understands that when I don't want any bullshit, I don't give me the bullshit. Just be honest, be on time, be loyal to your craft, and that's what he always did. But his back injury really shut him down. It shut down his push, it shut down his momentum. He had to essentially start all over. And boy, that's hard to do, Connie.
It's interesting to think about the end of his run here because we know that ultimately he's going to wind up going to TNA. We know that now. Maybe we
Right.
didn't know that back then,
I had an
but
idea. I had an idea.
you knew he was frustrated.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody that talked to him would know. Anybody that looked at his facial expressions, his body English. It's not hard. When you get to know these guys, these kids, I started to say, you understand their moods. You got to be able to read the book that they're writing. And he was one of those guys that was very easy to read. He was unsatisfied, and he thought that, he didn't know how long his bump card was going to last, considering that he was out 3 or 4 months, wherever it was, with a back injury. That's the kiss of death for a wrestler, back injuries. Because how many times does a move or a match or a sequence end up being with a flat back bump in some shape, form, or fashion? And if your back is weak and you get back problems, man, the clock starts ticking.
It is ticking. We see Christian working with John Cena, who's freshly moved to Raw from SmackDown. Cena's getting acclimated wrestling live on TV every week. He's been a taped superstar so far, being the pride and joy of SmackDown. So who can be trusted to make sure that this transition goes well and Cena
Yeah.
has good matches and he does well working on live TV? Who better than Christian? He was always there for these sort of things. And Christian himself finds himself moved to SmackDown, where he's going to put over Booker T and Chris Benoit. And then these rumors start popping up that his contract is going to come to an end.
Mm-hmm.
And his contract actually expires before his last appearance is supposed to happen. And that's Taboo Tuesday. He's going to show up just in case, and he's not chosen by the fans to appear, and he leaves the WWE. I mean, think about that. We've heard of this before where someone's contract expires in advance of a pay-per-view. And
Yeah.
maybe they no show, maybe they hold up the box office and get a pocket full of cash on the way
I just
out.
had a Jeff Jarrett brain bubble about that contracts being unsigned, and where you never take somebody at their word. Never get them sign the paper or don't work. And that was, I have to take responsibility for it because that was my charge. And that may have led, as time went on, to my moving by giving up that role. But I'll tell you this, Conrad, and I don't mean to break my arm patting myself on the back, but But before I left, we had built a one hell of a talent roster.
Oh, no doubt.
It might have been the best roster of all time.
Agreed.
Some will argue that point, and it's very arguable. It's just a opinionated type thing. But we built a roster that enabled, with the momentum and the profitability and the house show, the live event. In other words, ticket sales, merchandise sales, and yeah, I had Rock and Austin, but goddamn, I brought Rock and Austin in. You know, Rock from day one. Austin, after his brief stint at ECW, he wanted to come to WWE all along. It was an easy get for me because I love Steve's work. I said that even when he's in WCW, he's a blue chipper. He's going to be a big star in this business.
Yes.
And he I think he succeeded in that goal.
Just want to give a shout out to Christian. My man's contract is done, and he showed up anyway because he knew that Taboo Tuesday, in theory, and they would have you believe in execution, really was fan voting. So if fans voted to see him there, he didn't want to let his fans down. He did it. I'm sure he got paid.
Oh yeah.
And, then it was time for him to move on. And he debuts with TNA just 2 weeks later, and he is immediately presented as a top guy within the company. And a friend of mine, Jim, he always says in wrestling, Connie, it comes down to the 2 C's, cash and creative. It feels like a move like this, you know, leaving WWE might not mean you're going to make more money in TNA. So maybe it's not about the cash. But I couldn't imagine Christian being creatively fulfilled in WWE. So he's looking for that other C when he jumps to TNA, right?
I think so. Yeah. He just wanted to be acknowledged as a top guy because that's what he was. And he did good work at TNA. I think he helped build their brand, quite frankly. But he was reliable again. He came in, he made things better than it was before he got there.
Do you think under Vince McMahon's watch, it was always easier for a guy to go away and then come back in order to get himself repackaged or a renewed push? It feels like if you just hang around, it's not very likely to happen. A more recent example might be Cody Rhodes. I mean, he started with the WWE. He spent his entire career with the WWE, and then he was saddled with Stardust, didn't like it, didn't feel like he was being heard, reinvented himself as just himself, no gimmicks needed, I guess, and then came back, and now we see the run he's on now. But this was probably necessary for Christian here with Vince McMahon to leave and come back, right?
I think so. I think that's the most prudent way of processing that situation. Talent. There's not a lot of great talents in pro wrestling. There's a lot of real good talents. There's not a lot of great talents. It's just a cycle that we're going through. Guys have learned to work in a different sense, in a different way than their predecessors. And, the game has changed, Conrad, where guys are more versed in acrobatic high spots. I think I read one place sometime, if I can think of that, what he said, but it was Matt Hardy talking about the Young Bucks being, oh shit, I knew I'd forget it. Space, bumping monkeys or some bullshit.
Spot monkeys.
Spot monkeys. Good job, Conrad. That's why you're making the big bucks. Yeah, spot monkeys. Now he said that in a confrontational way to potentially build a match between the Hardys and the Young Bucks, which no doubt would be phenomenal because they're two great teams. Just two really great teams. So I'd like to think that the tag team division in AEW would have been much better off if you could have got to that Hardys versus Young Bucks match quicker, because that would have lit the fire of the tag team division, and more importantly, perhaps it would have motivated the other tag teams to pick their game up. So, but nowadays, the young guys they had their influences, And wouldn't you agree that the influences for a lot of the pro wrestlers today are high spots? Learning their high spots. It seems like it is to me. I don't know. I might be wrong. I might just be too damned old, get out of my yard type guy. But it just seems like it is, there's not a fit there. Something's wrong in that regard.